Hello, welcome, and thanks for tuning in to WVBR 93.5 FM, Ithaca, New York. This is Jacob, and this is the first edition of WVBR's new installment of Electric Buffalo Records Student Artist Interviews. With me today is Kurt Riley, one of Electric Buffalo's signees and performers, whose scintillating brand of glam/new wave/punk rock will excite you about the direction of contemporary and local music. Kurt, thanks so much for coming on today.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure.
Let's start with you as an individual, or at least your personality. What's your musical background like, and when did you start playing and writing your own material?
I started playing and writing probably about 15 years ago now, so a long time ago.
And how did you develop as a musician? You know, how did you become who you are today?
Well, I basically learned that music was a really great way to get girls. That was basically what got me into it. Basically, it was something that I fell in love with, and it was the first thing that really hit me and made me feel this is like what I want to do with my life. This is the only all-encompassing thing I can see myself being about for the rest of my existence. So I jumped headlong into it, and so far it's been very, very fruitful.
So what was it that first inspired you, I guess, to start writing your own stuff? Who were your early influences, more or less?
I got into music kind of like a historian because my family, I was not exposed to a lot of pop music because my family was very conservative. It was either like classical or religious music at home for the most part. And so when I heard pop music, I was very much a beginner, and I hadn't really heard any of it, and so it gave me a chance to start fresh, which I think was kind of a novelty that worked in my favor. I worked backwards, kind of like from patient zero through all these different artists that just were each other's like grandchildren and descendants. So, I got into the Stones, and then the Stones got me into Buddy Holly and Muddy Waters and Howling Wolf, and then, I'd listen to T-Rex and I'd say, wait, he's quoting Howling Wolf there, and then I'd listen to Adam and the Ants and I'd be like, wait a second, that's Bo Diddley and what they're doing. And so it was like this giant, beautifully incestuous relationship that I sort of figured out and got into.
So do you also find that your parents' conservative taste or any religious type of music, does that find their way into your own music currently, or?
Yeah, absolutely it does. One of the things that I've always thought was the greatest thing about American music, especially rock and roll, was the marriage of the African and European traditions, rhythm plus melody, and when you have one or the other by themselves, they're not satisfactory to me. I love it when they're married. It's just the greatest conversation. And so growing up, I got the white half of that, the very European staid, like classical Mozart, Bach, hymns, things like that, which really gave me a very great appreciation and love of melody, really, because if you remove like the religious element of it, a lot of hymns are absolutely gorgeous, like Amazing Grace, things like that. They're very beautiful. Handel's Messiah.
The idea of composing a symphony in somebody's head is astounding.
Oh, it's insane.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, and this was back before, Bach or Handel could not go, well, let me just pull up GarageBand so I don't forget this. They had to really do it. And so that's something I admire greatly. That being said, though, it really missed the grit of the human condition. And that's what I found in like American blues and rock and roll. So coming from where I grew up, I moved to Memphis when I was very, very early in my teens, and it was like an atom bomb going off. The change was just like night and day. Hearing rock and roll for the first time was just like a revelation in my head.
I'm sure there was also heavy like soul influence there as well.
Oh God, yeah, that's where Stax is, man. That's the seat of all of that.
Absolutely. How do you incorporate your musical and lyrical influences currently in your music? Especially like your lyrical influences is something that we love to hear about. And how would you say that they have changed over the years?
Well, the thing is, when I started off, I've always been primarily like melody-oriented rather than lyric-oriented. I always found brotherhood with Buddy Holly and Paul McCartney and Mark Bolan rather than with Dylan or Lennon, even though I really envied their abilities to sort of elucidate what was in their head.
Like poetic nature.
Yeah, it's just some of that's beyond me.
Yeah.
However, as I've grown up and matured and examined the art form, I've become much more adept at saying what I want to say. I just feel that pop music at its best is the ability to say something very, very complicated in a very simple, beautiful way. You're talking about life and existence in 3 minutes, and you have to make people want to pay attention,
Right.
And so I've always fought to make sure that whatever I'm saying, it's like, it's very direct, like a bullet. It doesn't dilly-dally around the point. But I guess as far as where my influences have come, I've become much more literate in the things I write about. You know, when you're 14, you write a song that's like, hey, baby, you're hot,
Right.
you know, let's go out, you know?
Sure.
And now, you know, I write a song that's like, hey, you're an Oscar Wilde, you're hot, let's go out. No, I mean, you know, I've become a lot more intellectual, I guess, with my writing. But
and how would you say that you sort of make your lyrics more direct, as you said, in terms of, you know, more of like the Dylan or Lennon approach?
Yeah, I mean, they've got such beauty in the things they said, though, and I've always admired that greatly. I also change up lyrics depending upon what my intended audience is with the music. Sometimes if I feel I just want to write like a 3-minute single, then I don't make it too complex. And then a lot of other times, I mean, I've written songs about, like, you know, futurism and automation and space and all kinds of things. I like writing about complex things. I just don't like being pretentious.
Sure.
Which I do all the time. So you have to steer me away from that, Jacob.
Will do.
Thank you.
So I guess, what do you think, you know, your future in music holds? Do you hope to, you know, pursue yourself as an artist to full extent? Do you hope to get into, you know, more on the business side of things, or not at all?
Well, as far as the future holds, the funny thing is, there was a very, very dark period in my life in which I completely gave up music and thought it wasn't going to work out, and I was just going to give up the ghost and move on. I went back to school, went to community college, got my associate's degree, worked at Target.
Mm-hmm.
I got back into it sort of by accident because I came up here to Cornell after community college and found out about Electric Buffalo Records, and I thought to myself, well, hell, you know, I've got this veritable discography because I'd never stopped writing. I mean, this is my 5th album I'm putting out now, so I've got just like a vault full of stuff. So I thought to myself, you know, I've got all of this stuff in this, you know, this vault of mine, and I'd love to get some of it out. And Electric Buffalo Records provided the perfect avenue to be able to do that. And so it was like a perfect set of circumstances, honestly.
Let's talk about what you did as a musician before, I guess, you went back to that community college, went back to school. And
sure.
How was that for you? Were you trying to, you know, sort of make it back then, or were you more focused on writing?
Make it. What an anachronism.
I know. Well.
No, I mean, I was totally all about it. I was asked not to come back to school after my junior year in high school. I was like, you know, I got in trouble and stuff. I, you know, avoided regular jobs. I avoided going to college like everyone I knew did. You know, I avoided responsibilities and becoming an adult and all that, and basically pursued it 100%. But I mean, it was the time of my life, man. I wouldn't give it up for anything. I know that might sound a little juvenile, but I mean, I was in this basically like punk R&B band called the Steel Hearts, and we put out like basically White Stripes versions of Chuck Berry songs and stuff like that.
That sounds great.
So fun.
Yeah.
Oh God! And the fellows I played with were just some of the greatest musicians. And then I made my first record with some very, very fantastic musicians, including a producer who went on to work with Beyonce.
Wow.
I'm not going to name drop because I think that's tawdry. And then, you know, it was just an absolute joy. There's no way to describe it. I mean, it's better than anything I've ever done in my entire life. And so, I don't know, losing that was a drag, but the fact that it came back and I had a second chance was like one of the greatest things that's happened. So it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah, I always hear that, you know, from people that have kind of gone through like the motions of trying to, you know, I guess make it in the music industry or whatnot, and, you know, they've even especially haven't found success that they were hoping. Maybe a lot of them have sort of gone through the state of disconnection from like, you know, what they loved and maybe their creativity, but then they've sort of resorted back to it, and they found it so therapeutic as even like almost a bigger part of their lives now than it was previously.
Yeah, basically what you have is you experience an ego death. You get into it, and it's this huge thing that just becomes your entire persona, and then you realize, oh, it's not going to happen, and you fall apart. And then you pick yourself up and put yourself together, and then when you get into it again, you're mature and seasoned and all of those words that make you sound old. But you come back into it, and it's like, okay, I now appreciate this in a different way.
Right.
Because I don't feel like an 18-year-old who's just like, play everything fast, play everything fast. Now it's like you can sort of sit in the eye of the hurricane and just enjoy it. And
it's more of an escape almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I guess let's talk about your new album, or the music that you've been at least putting out. So last semester you put out a single with Electric Buffalo called Robot Man. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I've always been a huge fan of science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
Massive nerd. I mean, that's probably why I got into music in the first place, because I was like, if I don't do something sexy, I'm never getting laid. I'll be just at home with comic books and old Star Trek movies, and I'll never be getting out there. So, but actually, automation is very, very pertinent. It's a very, very timely topic. Amazon.com actually, I think a year or two ago, purchased a company called Kiva Systems. Kiva Systems basically automated their warehouses. So where now you'd buy something off of Amazon and there was a team of maybe 200, 300 people who'd pick it up and ship it to you. Now they're these little Roomba-looking robots that swirl around on the floor, find what you ordered, and bring it to a shipper. So now there's 20 people in that warehouse instead of 300.
Right.
There are entire automotive factories in Europe that are called lights out production facilities, where there's no lights on in the entire building because robots don't need to see. There's just these arms going like this in the dark.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And this is happening. This isn't science fiction anymore. Right. This is real life. And the societal and economic implications of this, it's what's going to happen to all these people who can't work because there's no jobs for a lot of the population? What's going to happen to our interpersonal relationships? We already see this with Facebook, social media, how it changes the way we talk. There's that new app called People that's coming out that's notorious in the media. Have you heard of this?
No, I don't think so.
It's essentially going to be like a social profile that everybody sees of you, where you are now rated based upon everything from what your ex-girlfriend thinks of you to your employer.
That is absolutely terrifying.
Yeah. I'm trying to think to myself, okay, who have I screwed over? But yeah.
This is completely off topic. Who has the right to make such an app?
Who has the right to say they can't? That's
True.
the more important question, I think, legally.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, technology is changing so much and so quickly. And so I really wanted to write a song about that. I really wanted to encompass that. And so I wrote it from the perspective of this robot that's saying to humanity, hey, you're really going to like me. I'm better than your girlfriend or your boyfriend. I'll pay more attention to you. I'll be around whenever you want. I'll be gone when you don't want me there. And it won't hurt my feelings. I can work faster than anyone. I can work harder than anyone. Choose me over humanity. You might as well. And, stuff like that fascinates me. So
yeah, it's a crazy premise. But it worked out. It's a great song.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can actually the song is available on Spotify and iTunes currently. Also, let's talk about your new album that's coming out in February, and you will be having a new single as well. Be premiering is out now, correct?
Yes, yeah. The first single is coming out October 17th, and there will be 3 more over the next couple months in advance of the album. The album is the first concept album I've ever done. I've done 4 records before, but they've never had narratives. They've never had stories. And I decided to challenge myself and see if I could write an album around a structure like that. And so basically this first single is called Hush, 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 and it sort of lands us in the beginning of this story. What's going on, to put it briefly, is that there's a very, very distant planet, and on this planet there's a civilization that has gone all the way up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, past past having to worry about warfare or jealousy or greed or any of that. And the greatest thing now for them is to go to other cultures and sort of be like Prometheus and bring them that fire and say, hey, you little people, you burgeoning little civilization, let me help you get a kickstart. That's what brings them joy, because they find life to be the greatest virtue in the universe. So anyway, there's a king and a queen on this planet, and they just get married. And unfortunately, every citizen on this planet once in their lifetime has to go seed another planet with technology. Okay. And the queen's card gets drawn on her wedding day. It's like, oh, darn it, It's terrible timing. And so she says, hey, it's all right, honey. I'll see you later. I'll be back, And her name is Heaven Snow, the queen. It's like a pun, like Heaven Snow. I don't know. It's a dad joke. This is happening to me as I get older. I can't stop it. And then the king's name is King Bandel. And so Heaven Snow goes off to Earth, and she gets here in ancient Egypt, about 2500 BC. And when she arrives here, her ship is damaged. She cannot get back home. She can't communicate with the planet. And they have a rule. It's called the Horus Protocol. And they say, if you're alone on a planet and you're unsupervised with this technology, you cannot be left uncontrolled. Because there was one person from this species who went to a planet once, was unsupervised, and became basically a tyrant. And took these very primitive people and made himself a god and subjugated them. So she breaks this rule and she says, I like humanity a lot. I think they've got a chance and I believe in them. So I'm going to let them have this and give them a shot. And she dies a natural death here. And by the time King Vandal gets to Earth, it's the present day due to time dilation, relativistic effects traveling across so many light years.
Right.
And so he gets here, and he looks at Earth in 2015 AD, and he sees, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. He sees 9/11. He sees chemical warfare, all of this. And he's like, man, screw these people. She gave them all of this. She believed in them, and she died for them. And what have they wrought? They've destroyed each other for millennia. And as he's basically just about to be done with humanity, he sees this woman. Her name is Domino, and she's actually a prostitute. She's in like the lowest station you could be in society. She was, put into bondage in North Africa, taken through England, and then brought to the United States, basically as a human slave. And this is, very, very frequent today. People think slavery's over. It's bigger than it's ever been.
No.
And when I was reading about it, I was actually reading about slaves from North Africa put into the sex trade, and it really motivated me to incorporate that in this story.
Wow.
Because it is disgusting that this is happening still. So Domino, she has this awful, awful life. She can't go to anyone. She can't go to the authorities. She can't try to escape or anything. But she still manages to help the addicts she knows or the homeless she knows and try to give them like a blanket or some food when they need it or something. And he sees this, and it sort of touches him and makes him think, okay, maybe humanity's got like this spark of goodness within them that's worth, maybe that's what Heaven Snow saw that made her want to stay here. So he's about to leave, and his brother, the Vizier from the alien planet, shows up. And, the brother says to King Bandel, hey, what are you doing here on Earth? And I say, well, I don't know, what are you doing here on Earth? And it turns out that the Vizier actually sabotaged Heaven Snow's spaceship so she'd be stuck here. Then sent the king off on a wild goose chase after her, because if they were both gone from the home planet, he'd be next in line for the throne. And this Vizier is actually the evil, malevolent alien who took over that civilization, which made them have that whole rule in the first place. The Horus Protocol. Yeah. So he's a bad dude.
Clearly.
Yeah, and so they have this massive battle for the future of humanity and everything, and he beats the crap out of the Vizier, but it's a Pyrrhic victory because he's mortally wounded. But before he dies, the king bestows upon Domino this mantle. He says to her, you're now humanity's ambassador to my people. Wow. So you've gone from being the lowest of the low to now basically the preeminent human.
Wow.
So that's the story.
Wow, that's quite an elaborate story. That's
so
interesting.
I'm trying to write songs about that.
Yeah.
Right? No, I wanted to do something different.
No, that's wonderful, I think. Was there anything else that sort of inspired you to write that kind of story? Was there any, anything like other than the articles you were saying that you were reading about the African slave trade?
Well, also everything I hear all the time and everything I see in the news media and even anecdotally in conversation is people just talking about how bad humanity is. People are no good, everyone says. People stink. You can't trust anyone, etc., etc. All these really negative aphorisms that are just kind of thrown around. I don't know. I don't believe that. I refuse to believe that. Because if that's the truth, then what's the point of anything?
True.
Why do we do good? Why are there charities and churches? And why does anyone try to help? I really want to, encourage people, as paternalistic as that sounds, to just think that maybe humanity is good, and we do have something within us that's worth nurturing and believing in. Even if an alien has to come and sing pop songs to us. But yeah, so the album itself, Kismet, is about 13 songs long, and so it goes through this whole story from beginning to end. The first single, Hush, 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 is what happens when King Bandel gets here, and he realizes that Heaven Snow is long dead, and he's never going to be with her again, and he's just stuck here, and he's like, damn. Well, there's that, so.
And I guess musically, what kind of styles should the audience expect?
Most styles, except for basically hip-hop and country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Diversity's great.
Oh, I'm a huge fan.
Oh, yeah.
I can't do an album in one style. It's like being locked in a cage.
And would you say that there's, any specific message hidden within the album, like obviously sort of trying to portray, humanity in a good way, hopefully? Is that the main message you'd say?
Hope. Yeah.
Hope. Great. So I guess we are out of time. Thank you so much for coming in today, Kurt. And remember to check out Kurt's new single, Hush, 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 available on Spotify and iTunes, and his upcoming LP, Kismet, as well, which will be premiering in February of next year. Thank you so much for tuning in to WVBR 93.5 FM, Ithaca's Real Rock Radio. This has been the first edition of Electric Buffalo Records Student Artist Interviews, and we'll see you next time.